I really welcome the letter from George Canada from NNC, but it is nearly 4 weeks too late. If we'd waited for that reply, all 61 trees would have been felled. There's so much to say about all this, I'm not going to do all of that, but in terms of lawfulness, obviously Mr. Canada was mentioning about the works being lawful, and clearly that is being contested. I and the barrister which I've engaged and the community have engaged actually had a meeting with senior officers from North Northamptonshire Council last Wednesday, and it was very clear at that stage, even though North Northamptonshire Council is relying, and Vistry are relying on the exception that comes, or the exemption that comes from the statutory undertaking regulation in terms of the Town and Country Planning Act regulation number 14, clearly that is not yet proven. And in regards to that, the barrister and myself wrote to the leader of North Northamptonshire Council, Jason Smithers, last Thursday, asking for explicit information from either North Northamptonshire Council or Vistry in regards to the ground under which they are claiming statutory undertaking rights, as it were. Because the law is clear that there are only certain kinds of organisations that can be statutory undertakers, although those organisations can pass on that duty to other bodies. What we've asked for, and we still have not heard, despite the subsequent meeting on the Friday by the North Northamptonshire Council and Vistry, what we actually asked for was clarification, and I have a number of questions that were sent through, and if the Mayor would indulge me, I can read the questions that were passed by the barrister through myself to both North Northamptonshire Council and Vistry. They were asking for clarification of the ground under which Vistry felt they have that statutory undertaking power, where they're getting it from, which organisation is saying that they can do those things, and those organisations have to be explicit also about what they can do. So, also the clarification in terms of a plan showing those works on site, exactly where they are and why any trees would need to be felled because of those works. All of those questions were asked for last week, last Thursday, and as yet we have still not received an answer. So the barrister has advised me again this evening that unless that information is forthcoming, unless that evidence is provided, and it should be provided to North Northamptonshire Council, and I'll clarify that in a moment, unless that's provided, this work is not exempt, and therefore the tree preservation order still stands, and the lawfulness of the work that has already been done
seconds, please.
and could be done is still unproven. In terms of North Northampton's role in taking action and supporting the work that we in the community have tried to do, this is North Northampton's responsibility. They hold the TPO that was signed off and put in place by the Borough Council of Wellingborough in 2016. North Northamptonshire Council has the legal responsibility to oversee this. They cannot abrogate their responsibilities. They are in the frame. They absolutely have a role to play. And I really would hope, and I call on them, to do the right thing for our community, do their job, and make sure that the work that is being done is lawful. I have lots of evidence which we have shared with them that shows that is at best in question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council declared a climate emergency in 2021, adopting the UK government's set of recommendations to reduce emissions, adapt to current and future impacts of climate change, to raise awareness in communities to the causes of and the impact of climate change. So, why has it permitted the illegal felling of 61 mature lime trees in lieu of a new unnecessary carriageway, which goes against the point in its legal legislation. The mature lime trees are part of Wellingborough's green corridor. By that, I mean a strip of land that supports sufficient habitat to support wildlife within an urban environment. It connects the Nen Valley wetlands, Irchester Country Park, and the wider countryside through to the town centre and beyond. Cutting these trees down will detrimentally impact wildlife, removing its safe space of passage between both sides of the roundabout. It is a vital route for birds, insects and mammals. The road will destroy the orchids on the verges and the soil microbiology associated and release vast amounts of carbon. Where will the nesting birds go and where will the bats roost? The nectar of the lime trees is the vital source for our struggling bees and pollinators. Ladybirds and hoverflies feed on the aphids. A huge ecosystem is lost when one mature tree is lost, let alone dozens. Does this removal comply also with the Nature Pollination Strategy and Environment Act of 2014, which NNC has a responsibility to uphold? Why aren't the developers being transparent when it comes to the ecological reports and plans? Replanting whips and saplings will not compensate the loss of biodiversity of these lime trees, nor the mass felling of trees within the vicinity. Species chosen to replace those already lost should not be pioneer species such as birch, which can only live for 80 years, whereas a lime tree up to 400. Is the replanting diverse, climate-proof, and will it reinstate the canopy cover, which has been lost? What about the maintenance plan? Replanting needs to happen within the embankment of the London Road area, not at Stanton Cross nor the new parks, as the locations are nowhere near those that are lost. Once the lime trees are removed, we are then left with old silver birch, which in the not too distant future die and will be left with a barren landscape full of fumes, not foliage. So, to summarise action points for the Town Council, will they raise these points to the NNC? Will they commit to saving the trees left and strengthen protection of all the trees in the town with a robust and fully costed protection and replanting plan? And will they hold the developers and the NNC to account of their actions, failings and lack of transparency? Save our trees!
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Reid. The previous leader of VCW recently wrote, "We did not envisage more than 11 trees being felled." And Councillor Jason Smithers finished off his interview with BBC Radio Northampton saying, "We learn from this and move on." Both of these statements indicate mistakes were made or the planning department was misled. There is a plethora of newspaper reports from around the country citing Bovis Vistry Group either indiscriminately felling trees or ripping out hedgerows, resulting in litigation or angered residents having their localities decimated in the name of progress and profit. I name Collingtree, Basingstoke, Bristol, Bridport, Macclesfield, Stafford, effective housing in Milton Keynes and Maidstone. Need I go on? These are all Vistry Group developments. Our local ecology group is consistently frustrated with the lack of response and openness from Vistry Group Bovis Homes. This is an extract from an email I received from the Wildlife Trust for Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Northamptonshire. As reserved matters applications have come up for consultation, which are for parts of the Stanton Cross development closer to the Special Protection Area, SPA, we have repeatedly objected, raising concerns about impacts on the SPA and wildlife protection aspects of the development, which have not been put in place as promised. We have also raised our concerns directly with the developer. Unfortunately, I fear that the issues that have come to light in the last few days concerning the lime trees at Wellingborough Walks are part of a wider disregard to wildlife aspects. The Vistry Group has trampled on so many communities and will continue to do so. I ask the NNC and WTC that we do not learn from this and move on. We learn from this and make a change for good now. Our trees are still under threat. So I urge the WTC to support this request, look for ways to stop the felling of further trees. This is our heritage. Let us save it for our children's heritage too. Thank you for listening.
We've already heard that the word necessary mentioned by Jason Smithers when that was read out earlier on. And it's an important word that's used in the legislation that allows a statutory undertaker to fell a tree if it's necessary, very important word, necessary, to route a gas pipe, an electricity cable, a water main, because there's no other viable alternative. So that's very important, that word necessary. Now, we've had quite a lot of help over the last few weeks, and we've actually acquired some maps which you wouldn't be able to get at your normal news agent.
Can you clarify your role, please?
Sorry?
Can you clarify your role, your position? Sorry. Who are you?
I'm just, I'm Kevin Allen. I'm a resident. I've lived in and around Wellingborough for most of my life.
Thank you.
And my neighbour down the road got me involved in this, well, I guess it's a protest. I've never protested. Am I using up my 3 minutes just answering these questions?
Yeah.
Last time I protested was when I got grounded for failing all my mocko laws. So, anyway, we knew there were gas pipes that run under the trees we're talking about. So we're talking about the trees from Tesco's roundabout to the bridge. Vistry claim they need to fell the whole lot. Marion and her merry band of protesters, with the aid of a barrister that goes up trees, have managed to prevent all but one of those trees from being felled so far. So we know there's gas pipes running under the trees. The big one that brings the gas into Wellingborough has got to be enlarged because there's 8,000 houses being built. There's also large power cables that run both sides of the road, and there's also a gas pipe that runs down the middle of the trees, which might surprise you all, because in the late 70s, when they built the A45, and if you remember, those of you who lived here then, they put a dual carriageway in front of where Tesco's is. There was all the development on that site. The roundabout replaced the old traffic light crossroads that was there years ago. And the work they had to do then was the statutory undertaker had to redirect large gas pipes, put in new gas pipes because it seemed a sensible thing to do at the time. There were 33,000 volts. There's one 33,000 volt cable that goes under these trees that goes from the substation behind Tesco's to the substation in Irchester. There are several 11,000 volt cables that run either side of the road. Some of them pass very close to the trees. So these are all utilities. The work is carried out by a statutory undertaker. Now the difference is that in the late 1970s, the statutory undertakers were East Midlands Electricity Board, whatever the gas board was called at the time, and they were state-owned. So they had no requirement to make huge bottom line profits or pay dividends out to shareholders. Now the difference now is the statutory undertakers are Cadent, who do the gas. This is one of their maps. And then we've got National Grid, which we've all heard of. But these are private companies now. You can buy shares in them if you want to. Now, all that pipe work, the trees we know are 110 years old at that lower part. They're on maps that were drawn up before World War I. So they're at least 110 years old. So they predate all the utilities that run in, around them, between them, underneath them. All that work's been carried out. No tree has ever been lost to carry out that work. There are 2 trees that are missing, blown down a few years ago. ago and had to be cut down, unfortunately. The other tree was cut down as one of the 61 that had to go. But all these trees would have gone, like they'd all be on the ground now, a pile of logs. But they're not. And the only point comes back to that word, necessary. How come 40 odd years ago, people managed to lay a big gas pipe, high voltage cabling, there's loads of telecommunications cables, there's a water main on the other side of the road.
Can you still that please, Mr. Mayor?
No tree was lost, and now apparently it can't be done without felling all the trees. I suggest that is abuse of the power of the statutory undertaker. They're using their exemption to do the work as efficiently, therefore as cheaply, therefore as profitably as they can.
I've lived in the town for only 5 years, and I'm a trained architect. I also happen to have 2 small children at home. We, as the residents of this town, should not have to accept this steamroller design and development approach. What has happened with the trees that have been felled is unacceptable for many reasons, at least not the historical, economic, aesthetic, and environmental, to name a few. We need to have a serious discussion of local mitigations. What about social and cultural damage already done to the walks, the historic tree-lined avenue, and the grand entrance of our town? This is not just about planting hundreds of new small saplings somewhere else and establishing a new country park across town. That's great, but what about the value of the existing place directly disrupted by these enabling works? The original master plan was completed, 20 years ago, updates 5 years ago, and the details are still unfolding. The world has changed significantly since 2002. I find it unacceptable to claim that since outline planning permission was given, there is nothing now that can be done. Have we handed over a carte blanche to developers to fill in the details however they see fit? Processes, discharging conditions, reserve matters. This has been less than transparent, nor accessible, and I very much welcome the upcoming public engagement. However, still waiting for more details about this. Will more trees be felled in the meantime? As we have learned, the level of detail that is now being executed is not aligned with what councillors originally thought they were approving, nor what the environmental impact statements and reports were based upon. It was 11 or 12, not 60 trees. We, as a community, and you, our town council, and as our elected representatives, I implore you to hold the developers to account and not to accept this. My specific question is regarding the splash park and the negative impacts that the proposed dual carriageway, or the road, a large road, directly adjacent to a children's play area. When will the public be presented with a mediation strategy to buffer the noise, air pollution for this larger roundabout? It's full of idling cars. Like, what century do we live in? Families access the embankment, one of our town's main amenity spaces, safely. Have you tried to cross that road with a cram, a buggy, a toddler on your shoulders? There's been much talk lately of green corridors for wildlife, which I totally respect. What about the shared habitat for people? This is our town. Public spaces for the existing residents, visitors, our future legacy. Thank
you. Lifetime Wellingborough resident. I'm representing family and friends who cannot be here tonight or deeply upset by the felling of the trees. Part of the tree preservation order legislation is to reinstate as closely as possible after any removal works. Can Wellingborough Town Council push NNC to ask what immediate action will there be to counterbalance the visual aspect from the loss of our 15 mature heritage trees and to the instant loss of oxygen and air quality, loss of water retention and increased flood risk on London Road and the embankment? Thank you.
My teacher's voice, if you like. Just picking up on a couple of comments there about the police, for example. Complaint has gone in to the Office of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, and I'm awaiting a response, which you will hear about. Like you, I was appalled at the way people were treated. And in response to your comment, it's exactly for times like this that Wellingborough Town Council is important. North Northampton covers a huge area. Wellingborough is one small part of it, and we, as councillors, represent you. And although we might not have the power, we have got the words. Some of us are dual hatters, so some of us can speak at North Northampton meetings, but we're here to hear local people. Do you imagine that North Northampton would call a meeting and want to hear from all of you? No. That's why they're not here tonight. Otherwise they would have come. So Wellingborough Town Council is important. It's local democracy. It's where grassroots issues come to the fore, are taken up, and our lives are changed, hopefully for the better. Anyway, the motion. In proposing this motion, I'm giving a clear message to those involved in the destruction of our historic walks, that Wellingborough Town Council is proud of its green heritage and will defend it from reckless actions in the pursuit of money. As we have no clear information from the developers, and as NCC has refused to give the council this information regarding planning decisions, we have no alternative than to consider the actions taken over the last 2 weeks as suspect. As a North Northampton councillor, I was there, as I said before, on the 9th of February when I was told that those trees would go. I would not have been fulfilling my role if I didn't stand up, both as an NNC councillor and a Wellingborough Town councillor, to condemn that action, if it had gone ahead. This meeting has been called, and the motion I present will give us a clear response and a clear way forward. It allows us to respond to NNC and their lack of leadership and transparency, giving them time to find the relevant plans and agreements for Route 2 and the utility work. This motion also commits us as a legal body to all the necessary steps that we might need to use to enable that to happen. Then looking forward, this motion will result in a tree preservation order being placed on other significant trees in Wellingborough, and so give some protection to our green areas. But those trees, which we talk about on the embankment, they would have gone if it hadn't have been for you. Give yourselves a round. They would have gone if it hadn't have been for people like you getting up and protesting, even if it's the first time you've protested in your life. And we, Wellingborough Town Council, want to thank you for your commitment, energy and enthusiasm. So let me read the motion, shall I? Wellingborough Town Council condemns the appalling damage inflicted on our town's natural heritage through the felling of 15 protected, healthy, mature trees from the historic Wellingborough walks. Wellingborough Town Council thanks local residents and protesters for their amazing work to challenge and halt this action, and condemns the refusal by North Northampton Council to take firm action to prevent it. Wellingborough Town Council agrees to 1. Demand that NNC supply a clear and transparent audit trail of all planning and highway decisions concerning Route 2 and the walks by the end of March. 2. To commit to taking all necessary steps within its powers to safeguard all of the protected trees on Wellingborough walks. And 3. To create a town-wide tree preservation policy and work with local communities to identify and apply for TPOs for all significant Wellingborough trees. I move.